feel like we've spoken quite in a lot of amounts, in a huge amount. We've been speaking a lot about Brian Chira, his passing, when he passed, the circumstances of it, all the I don't know, conspiracy theories that had been put up, all the clarity that people had decided to shed, all the weirdness that was of the people taking pictures of him in his not alive state. I mean, it's been quite a bit, but at least there's some amazing things that have come out from this. A lot of charity that has come out from this, and we'll be speaking about that in a little bit. We also have even further of a conversation about the song with Otile Brown, the one called we just played at the beginning of the show, and how people are claiming that for some reason it's him grasping this horrible story and tragedy and trying to spin it around to clout. And finally, Majimbo and her nudes. Let's get into it. It's time for Hot Talk. So basically, let's talk about Brian Chira. I think we all are aware that he passed on the 16th of, I think, this month. And it was a sad story. There were very many truths about how it actually happened. But the ultimate fact is that he's no longer with us. Rest in peace, Brian Chira. But yeah, he had a huge ceremony. There was a candle vigil that happened at Rainbow Resort in Ruiru for all his fans who couldn't make it to Githunguri for his burial on the 24th. And a lot of people came in a lot of numbers. I've seen people talking about it. I've seen people spinning it in their own ways because unfortunately, clout is clout and people will use anything for the hype. But ultimately, I think the most important thing was the one person that was seen to be standing steadfast in this whole ordeal has been Baba Talisha, someone who was with him even during his time alive. Like Turi had mentioned this before on the show, where she'd actually seen videos of Baba Talisha going all the way to Brian Chira's house and helping him clean up the house, like properly clean up his house. And he'd been such a strong supporter, always giving him advice, always cheering up for him during his difficult times. And it was such an amazing thing to see him in his life in that way. And even to the end, he was still Baba Talisha, constantly championing for our friend Brian Chira. Now, he had helped with organizing the funeral and all of the other things, including, I think, the candle vigil. He also has been the forerunner in making sure that Shusha Brian was like constantly taken care of. The contributions apparently surmounted to upwards of 10 million Kenya shillings, which is a huge amount. Such a huge charity being played by Kenyans, his fans, his friends, his family. A lot of people came through for him, and it was such an amazing and beautiful story. Now, in all these things, I think there was this whole dramatic bit that happened where people were saying that he took about $2,000 to buy himself a new phone, which was, I'm just like, okay, I don't understand why anyone would do that. But it was like a weird story people are trying to pass around. And I'm just like, y'all need to stop. Like, this man has done enough, if not more, for a person who was not his blood relative. Okay. Anyway, Bonfire Adventures has been one of the huge champions of now rewarding not just him but his grandmother as well, with a trip to Diani for 3 days and 2 nights as a thank you, just for like the way he stood up for the grandmother, the way he held the hand of the grandma during this whole time, the way he was very keen on making sure that the wishes of the grandmother, which were for Brian Chira to be buried in a graduation gown because he was a smart kid. Apparently he was an A student. Did you all know that? He was an A student, and the grandmother insisted that they bury him in a graduation gown because yes, he hadn't graduated from Kabarak University, but still, in her eyes, he was the smartest kid like she'd ever met, and she wanted that to be recognized. So Baba Talisha had for sure tried to make this happen, and it's a beautiful thing what Baba Talisha and many of the other fans and friends that came through for them did. But the two of them do deserve like a for a moment. So we love that Bonfire Adventures were able to come through for them in this way. And I think the quote from Bonfire Adventures was, what did they say? They said that Baba Talisha na Shoshoya Chira, I think some efforts deserve recognition. Bonfire Adventures and Events has given you 3 days and 2 nights fully paid flying holiday to Diani at the time of your choice. So I love that at least even with all this happening, with them dealing with all this, they get a chance to actually go somewhere secluded and just USA. I love this for Bonfire Adventures. I love this act of charity. It's something people don't think about, just like the the calm after the storm. I think this is very, very, very commendable, and I would wish that many other people would come through in this way. But in addition to that, we've also had people also speaking about the fact that, yeah, maybe we need to do a little better when it comes to charity. Maybe not after the fact. We had someone by the name of Dame of Facebook who was very clear about her stance and how guilty she feels. She said it's very unfortunate that if we all came through for Brian when he was still alive, if people actually showed this level of charity to him when he was still alive, maybe he would still be here with us. She said that he was on social media asking for people to help him with rent money, and people did not come through for him, including herself. They didn't come through for him, but now look at him. He's been buried 10 million Kenya shillings richer. It is a sad affair, but in reality, calls back to let's help people when they're still alive. Let's actually be the champions for these people when they're still alive, and not speak after the fact with regret or guilt, or give in huge bounds and bountifully simply because you're trying to get rid of the guilt of what we felt or what we feel after the fact. So I think it's a very interesting story. I love both stories of how people came through. It was massive, like massive. I think the thing I loved the most was the way they played his voice, his TikTok video voices, part of his interviews that he'd done before, and some of the videos, sounds from the videos that he'd done on TikTok. They played them during the whole time, and you could hear people repeating his words. My name is Chira, everyone's going Brian Chira, and other people, like that quote he used to say where if it's not money, you won't stress me. It was really, really commendable. I honestly feel like, yeah, in his death he was appreciated. In his life, maybe not so much, but he was a complicated person. Let's just leave him to rest in peace and find that thing he was looking for. Let him find it. I hope in his passing he has found it.
I feel like the Brian story is such a sad one,
It's
to be
a
honest,
car
because
crash.
he was a very troubled young man, extremely troubled, but he was also at the same time very vulnerable. It felt like your very annoying younger brother
Yes.
that keeps bugging you all the time, but you still have love for him because, yes, he was troubled. He was not willing to work on his issues, but at the same time, he was so happy-go-lucky and just didn't stress over anything. You know, like he was just living and seemed to be thriving. I remember a time when guys contributed upwards of 300,000 for him, and then he came back on the internet and talked badly about everyone.
Literally everyone.
So I feel like it's very contradicting, the life he led, but at the same time, it rubs you off the wrong way. You know, the way people showed up. Yes, they showed up to support him, but there are people who showed up with very different agendas.
Yep.
People who went there just because it was a road trip.
Yep.
People who went to the funeral just because they were there to create content.
And see celebrities.
I saw a girl who came on TikTok and started crying, talking about how she did not manage to get food at the funeral. And I'm like, a whole human being, a whole adult got on the internet, set up a ring light and their tripod and talked about how they did not get food at the funeral. So I feel like very many people had very different intentions when they showed up for the burial. A huge chunk were there to support this young man and support the family, but there were also others who just came with agenda very
For being
different.
honest, it's poetic. It's poetic if you think about it. Because just as Chira was complicated, just as he always just missed the mark when it came to when to be political.